Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
Genius, welcome to class.
Thank you, Leonard. I feel very welcome here and very supported and safe. And that's a wonderful feeling for a living American musical theater composer working in an age of terror.
From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
We're going to talk about one of the great songwriting talents of the modern musical theater, Jacob Sterling, the star of What's That Smell?
What? Who?
Who is, in fact,
Who's that?
imaginary, and the creation of actor, writer, librettist David Pittu, who's our guest, along with his co-star, Peter Bartlett.
Making your, what, third, fourth appearance here?
Third appearance, yes.
Well, we're always delighted
We're
to have you.
delighted to have you,
happy
Peter.
to be here.
And
Thank
David,
you.
making your debut on Theater Talk.
Yes, my debut.
This Jacob Sterling character in this play of yours, What's That Smell? He's a Broadway composer. He's been around New York for a while, and
He's finally making it to Broadway.
And he's the guest on a public access show that you, Peter, host.
Yes.
And who is Jacob Sterling, David? What is his background, and how good of a songwriter is he really?
He's a genius, and he's a little older than me. He's been around for a good part of the 80s and the 90s, struggling away.
Mm-hmm. But he's never had a hit.
No, I guess not, but he will.
And then what, Peter, your character is called?
Leonard Swag.
Who has a musical theater
musical
show.
theater.
That's right.
And what does Leonard Swag see in Jacob Sterling that perhaps Broadway hasn't quite grasped yet?
I just think he's, singularly talented, and I've known him since going to a piano bar called Bottoms Up.
Yeah.
About
Jacob used to work.
20 years ago.
Which unfortunately closed down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where did Jacob Sterling come from? I mean, how did you envision this character?
I hate to sound like profound or anything, or try to sound profound, but it was after 9/11. There's a lot of stuff about 9/11 in the show, which take it or leave it. I don't know. I think, and this character, I don't know. After 9/11, I got very deep, and I started to think that there was no more. The possibility of art in our culture was really,
But how did it come out as this?
Yeah, you're right.
This songwriter who's not really making it.
Well, I love the idea that this guy, feels really compelled to interpret an event like 9/11, and there are other things in his life which have precluded his Broadway debuts and other things. That he was always about to, he was about to do his musical of Private Benjamin with Lonnie Anderson on Broadway, but never had gotten the rights to it. So there's all these issues that keep coming up, and it's
so far removed from the way it really works in the theater.
But no, so I don't know. I loved this idea of trying to this person who is so desperate to be the voice for a country or a city or whatever. He talks about his song cycles and about New York, and there's a lot of these ideas of mine. I don't know, what is even New York? It's what does New York mean now?
But you could have done a serious sort of show about after 9/11. Instead, you decided to do kind of a parody, really, a satire on all the people we know and love who are in and around the musical theater.
Yeah, but I gotta tell, I must say it was myself I was trying to filter it through first. Before I wasn't trying to imitate anybody specifically. I was really trying to go here I am, this actor who used to love musical theater, who, is looking for an outlet of some kind artistically, and I found it through this character. It was fun to kind of create a filter for myself.
When did you bring Peter into it? Did you write the?
Because Peter is a couple years ago.
He is the perfect cable television show.
I wrote the part.
You are.
I wrote it for Peter because I knew I wanted to do something with Peter, and we've been friends, and we did Never Gonna Dance together, another musical.
Right. Yeah.
And what was I saying? I forgot.
Why you wrote,
No,
you wrote, you
when
wrote
I
Philly
came
Monday.
on, but
originally
he
I
had done
started it
another
out.
2 or 3
Yeah.
workshops.
I started it out as a spoof of Masterclass because I thought it would be funny to have, you know, this kind of questionable guy going
other
back
people
to
how
his
to
alma
perform.
mater. Yeah. And so there were these kids, and it was me and these kids, and I just couldn't really sustain that.
Yeah.
And I felt it was, everybody liked the funny songs, about, the songs and the funny monologues about, you know, what inspired this particular thing. And more and more the kids got taken out of it. And then I thought, well, why not just do, you know, a kind of actor studio-ish type thing.
So
And who
now,
better?
Your career's been going great guns. Well, yes, you know, because you got the Tony nomination for playing Brecht, and then you got another Tony nomination for being in.
Is he dead?
Yeah, and so how did you have time to finish this?
Well, you know, I've been working on it for like in the shadows, sort of. You know, it's been a fun outlet for myself. So
David can do anything. I hate him.
Please.
Oh, now you.
But he can. He can just do anything.
You
And
have a
how
lot
he
of
can direct
versatility.
and write and lyrics and
Yeah, but-
my God.
I
Peter,
just
you
like
played,
to have fun.
You played a character not dissimilar to the one you're playing in this, Paul Rudnick's play.
Very,
Mr.
very
Charles.
different.
Right. It really is different. I know that people come to see the performances and but
Just give us a sense.
Leonard's really very different.
Musical theater is my passion. I'm appalled when it's called a dead form.
What's so interesting about your show is that we do know those people, as I said, who are in and around the musical theater. Leonard Swag his whole life is lived in the musical theater. We know people like that. What is the attraction of the musical theater that people seem to be so completely devoted? I mean, we all know people who can't tell you if the United States is in Iraq or if Barack Obama won, but they can tell you what song was removed from Tenderloin, the tryout in Boston.
Yes.
I mean, you guys work in the musical theater. You've been in your what is that phenomenon about?
Well, it's something that comes up in the show in a obviously more absurd way, but I think something did happen in the '80s. I think. Where the musical theater, at least Broadway musical theater, stopped being that oasis, I think, for people, and I think it definitely has something to do with the gay culture. Obviously, that something changed. It became less that oasis for New Yorkers and gay men, and the typical, and it suddenly, I don't know, it stopped being about.
Well, it became for
those
tourists
people.
and family shows.
Yeah.
Well, do you mean then gay men had other opportunities to be in other things besides musical theater?
Well, I just think that fascination that you're talking about, that obsessive fascination
Yeah.
with musicals is
Which
something.
these two characters have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so much of musical theater exists. Well, all theater exists only in people's memories,
Yes, yes.
And these two characters kind of sift through all of these many shows, and it's like that vocabulary is gone now. I think it doesn't. I don't know what has replaced it necessarily. I don't know if it's Madonna or other things in our culture, but I mean, obviously, this has been true for a long time.
Well,
I mean,
but musical theater was at the center of the popular music world.
Yeah, and it seemed to be
yeah.
where all the arts converged, like
Converged,
theater,
right.
art, music, everything, the best of everything.
What's your sense of this, Peter? I mean, you must know with these musical theater devotees who live their lives with their old cast albums.
Yes, well, you have but to look online. I mean, they still seem to be pretty legion.
Yeah.
And God,
But now it just
I
feels
hope they're
even-
watching this show.
I hope so too. I hope they come to see our
Absolutely,
Do you have a
absolutely.
sense of what this world is, this phenomenon is all about?
I don't know. Musical theater when I was a kid, it was very exciting to me. It was something to really escape into. It was larger than life. It said what I wanted to say, and it sang it.
And it brought people together. I mean, I don't mean to just make it sound like it was for gay men only,
Yeah.
but I mean, that was a sort of subtext to it, I think, that could be enjoyed while the mainstream also took something else from it. I don't know if that means
No, but there was a kind
sense.
of deliverance of it.
Absolutely.
The drowsy
It's
chaperone,
very
that's right.
narcissistic in a good way.
Yeah, yeah,
that everything is
narcissistic in a
about,
good way.
I'm going to make it, and I'm going to,
Yeah,
it's always
yeah.
about that kind of.
And also, it's a collaborative form. Then
Yeah.
when you grew up and went to theater school or college and got in the theater department, it was a collaborative art form.
Right.
Then you found your fellow theater lovers and
There
had
is
a world.
There is, though, I think, as enjoyable as the show is, as much fun as it is, there is a sad strain to it in the sense that it is set, now after AIDS, and you got, since these two guys are survivors, that a lot of the people that they were going to shows with and chatting about the first preview of some disaster, their whole world and friends gone. Experience that you guys had in your own, in your own lives?
Two very important people and my family members who I lost when I was younger, and one of them in particular, my cousin Gene, who was just a, he was the person in my life who he was much older than me, but I was like 10 and he was 20, and he was always going to New York and going to the shows and forcing me to listen to the albums. And this show is partly, very much dedicated to him. It's sort of like the show I think, dreamed he could have had at some point.
And Peter, you were in New York at the time before
Absolutely,
AIDS.
and there was so many people I knew that were, for some reason, so many young people that I had worked with, and sort of enormously talented, playwrights and musicians, and it was filling for all of us.
Yep.
But there's a lot of energy and creation out there now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think of, I think, La Cage as being like the last.
Yeah, the last kind of old-fashioned sort of Broadway musical.
Because it was written by, a sort of one of the legends.
Jerry Herman, one of the last.
But we never know. Billy Elliot just opened last week.
Oh, yeah, no,
and
exactly. But it's not American.
Well,
it's very
there's
British.
that. Oh, well, okay.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure it's wonderful. I haven't seen it. But, there's that sense of that it's not ours.
I'm sorry, I think it's over. I just don't think you can go into a drag bar and where you once saw people dressed like Liza Minnelli and Carol Channing, you're not going to see them dressed like Ariel and Mary Poppins.
Or Idina Menzel.
Or Idina Menzel.
No.
I don't know. All right, we got to wrap it up, yeah?
Yeah.
The delightful show, What's That Smell? What does the title refer to? Because people might say, what does that mean?
What's That Smell is one of his signature songs. It was the song, the main song from his New York City song cycle, which was sort of his best known work as he was up and coming.
Yeah.
A lot of people like Merv Griffin and Bonnie Franklin saw it.
And Uta Hagen.
Oh, listen, I understand Steve Sondheim came to the show the other night.
He came when we were still at Atlantic, and we didn't see him afterward, but he was the loudest laugher.
He was
loved it.
great. He was great.
He was great.
He loved it.
He laughed at everything. He got every joke. And Hal Prince, too, and Judy came, and they loved it, too, which was all I needed.
And we spoke to Mark Shaman, who wrote Hairspray not too long ago. And he saw the show and he loved it, too. So you've touched a nerve, even with the songwriters who've made it. All right, Peter Bartlett and David Pittu, the stars of What's That Smell at the, what theater are you at?
New World Stages.
New World Stages. Here's to a long run that Jacob Sterling never got.
Oh,
thank you so much,
you.
Michael. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Private Benjamin's first name in the film was Judy. Her husband dies during intercourse on their wedding night, which always struck me as very biblical. And then she joins the army. This was her big song from Act 1. As a young Jewish girl, my goal in life was to find a Jewish boy, a doctor, a lawyer, to make me his wife and to pay for the things I enjoy. Broadway clothes, designer clothes, nose jobs, handbags, and shoes, my accessories, and his success would be the envy of all the other Jews. But since I'm here, you won't be shocked to hear my dream went off a cocked. Now alas, I'll start explaining how my Jewish ass wound up in basic training.
But I can't regret what I
Tonight's guest is often referred to as the most powerful man in the theater.
He's so powerful, he's even making me nervous, and I never get nervous, even around my good friend Gerald Schoenfeld, who is the chairman of the Shubert Organization, a vast theatrical empire. Jerry Schoenfeld, welcome to Theater Talk.
Thank you very much.
We should say these are flush times for you at the Schuberts. I mean, you have 4 or 5 shows as backups for most of your houses. There seems to be more activity now than there has been in years on Broadway.
Especially in the straight play area. Yes. In the musical area,
there's a problem.
There's a not the kind of quantity that there used to be.
Can your industry survive without big hit musicals, though? I mean, they are the real money makers, are they not?
They are the really money makers. They are the real money makers, and also those shows are able to carry the unprofitable theaters that make up each chain. There are only 3 chains: Shubert, Nederlander, and Jew Jamson. And it's very fortunate for the city and the state and the public that these theaters are in these kinds of hands, solid hands, because if they weren't, I don't think that a lot of them could continue to exist.
They would have been closed down years ago had they not been.
People are taking money out of one pocket, excuse me, and putting it into another pocket. People who own them, I think, are dedicated to their continuance. But there is no benefit afforded to these theaters, most all of which are between now close to 100 years and 70 years old. They were built for another time.
You joined the Shubert Organization in what year?
Well, I joined the law firm that represented them in 1949.
1949, and then you and your friend and business partner, the late Bernard Jacobs, you wrestled control of this theatrical empire from Shubert family members in 1972. Can you tell us how that came about? I mean, it's one of the great stories of Broadway, how you built this empire.
There was a period when J.J. Shubert was alive, and his son John was alive, and of course they were running the business, and I became their lawyer in 1957, and Bernie joined me 9 weeks later, and then there was the unfortunate deaths of J.J. and his son John, and we supported a grandnephew to become the president of the company, whom we really did not know well, and unfortunately during his years the business went.
It was losing quite a bit of money, wasn't it, when you stepped in?
Quite a bit of money. And Mrs. John Shubert and Lawrence, who was the grandnephew, needed to appoint new people to the board. There was no real affection by either one for the other. And Mrs. John Shubert was to me, not only a wonderful woman, but she was responsible for Bernie and me becoming board members. Bernie and I guess, becoming board members. And Lawrence picked 2 others as his choices for being on the board. And it was not too long thereafter that he got involved in a tremendous fight with one of his selections. And the business was losing a lot of money. And he was voted out by a vote of 5-1.
And you guys were voted in?
He being the one.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we were on the board.
Right.
But
you shored up this empire.
we were voted in to really run the business.
Right, right. And you shored it up. I mean, this was a theatrical empire that was really beginning to unravel, I think.
It was beginning to unravel. We had the Shubert Theater in Los Angeles, which took us 4 years to break even with Chorus Line. It took us 4 years, basically, for the company to break even. And after that, in that period, 1974 came Equus.
Right.
1975 came Chorus Line. And then the business itself went into one of its cyclical upturns. And Annie came along. And later on, Amadeus and Cats. And then after Cats, Phantom and Les Mis came along. But then the business started to go into another bit of a downturn. But we were very fortunate having these large, successful musicals.
Now, it was always said that you and Bernie really, I mean, you controlled this industry for many years, many aspects of it. Do you still feel that power and that control that you have over the industry, or has it changed in so many ways now that, you know, two guys running a big theater chain just can't control every area of it?
The idea that we control, and therefore people have to, in some way, pay obeisance, that may have been true when Lee and J.J. Shubert were alive. Of course, they controlled 104 theaters throughout the country. They booked over 1,000 theaters throughout the country. They had 5 theaters in London. They had crushed the biggest monopoly the theater ever knew, called the Syndicate. There's no comparison. We never sought to dominate. We, I think, became team players insofar as the League is concerned, which is our trade association.
League of American Theaters and Producers.
That's correct.
Jerry, we got to wrap it up. I do want to ask you, you created the Shubert Organization. In many ways, you created the theater industry as we know it today, you and Bernie. Bernie died 5 years ago. I'm sure you, like God, you will endure forever, but you won't be at the top of the Shubert Organization forever. What's going to happen to this empire that you guys created? Who controls it
First
someday?
of all, Phil Smith is a very
terrific
significant...
guy. The president of your company?
Yes, force in our business, in our company. Bob Wankel is a very effective force. We have a large number of very capable executives. We have a board of directors, some very important people on our board. And obviously, as in any corporation, the question of succession will be determined, will really be determined by them. I think that the necessary ingredients in that have to be involved with any person or persons who may be future heads of this company will probably differ from the talents that Bernie and I or Phil have. But that does not necessarily mean that the inherent structure and foundation of the company or the delegation of authority to different people who have separate skills that might not be embodied in one person will not be just as effective.
Well, everybody can't be a Jerry Schoenfeld.
Well, you know, Michael, these things come about a lot by chance.
Yes.
And if chance was not a factor in my life, I wouldn't be here today. Unforeseen events resulted in an early ascension on my part to my position. But it was not an easy ascension.
No, but it's been a good life.
And the way I see it, Shubert Organization is a company that's 100 years old. And it is dedicated to the perpetuation of these theaters. Others who have really helped sustain these theaters, like I am, transients. But the venues have to remain. And frankly, I think that the present group of theater owners are dedicated to that proposition.
And you know you must travel along as a parade. Music for the Titans and making the parade. For the girls it's like a bad dream. Don't stretch yourself and get enough
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Loewe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the CORY and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy STRELSIN Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
Playbill Online is the official website of Theater Talk and the home of the Playbill Club, providing information and opportunities for theater lovers. We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.